All right, Richard, let's talk part two. Our War Volume 2, which I got both of them right here. I should have held them up. Oh, let's do this. There we go. Volume 1 and Volume 2. It's different when you're looking at the camera and it's backwards.
Yep.
Here you go. Here's both of them. So, let's talk let's talk Volume 2. So, we pick up where we left off in Volume 1. No spoilers. So, we want people to go buy it, not spoil it here.
Yep.
Everybody's still alive. They still don't know what the hell's going on. They know that there's bigger problems going on outside. Um, where did Volume 2 start to go, and how did you kind of get it there after Volume 1?
Well, volume two, like you said, it picks up immediately where one left off. Um, there was there was a bit of a slow build up to get to the grit with that one. There was some lessons that I'd learned. I remember the Joe Rogan podcast with Jack Carr, and they were talking about True Believer. Um, and he and Jack had mentioned about an interpreter, I believe it was, that worked with him and then just vanished one day. There's a character introduced in volume two that I legitimately is based on a guy I legitimately met the guy once, but I know his background because he's very good friends with a very good friend of mine, and he does have that military and attachment to Langley. And I thought, hey, what are the odds? I mean, we all joke, and talk about what a small world it is.
Right.
Well, the world just spent a year, almost a year at that point in the book, getting smaller. So what are the odds that this guy could very well show up on my doorstep, so to speak, or on the main character's doorstep? Um, so that's where he came from. And from there, you start to pick up because now you can start, okay, we know why this guy showed up. Now we got to confront the problem. So I went out driving and going to the town that Gold Beach is actually based on, and looking around and driving up and down the streets and clocking mileage. Even I was even a stickler for that. Um, and again, a lot of it was, okay, what do I want to happen next? Nothing. Again, didn't spend very much time in the military whatsoever. But I also know the best laid plans never go according to plan.
Every time.
And I wanted that. I wanted that moment because that's real.
Yeah.
I could have written it different and had everything go perfectly and had everybody read it and say, yeah, that's not how it works.
Yeah, there has to be some hiccups along the way. And I think
Yeah.
Volume 1 was very much do we go outside of the fences? Do we dare go see what's out there? It was more out of do we need to do it? It was out of kind of a necessity. And then in
Hmm.
Volume 2, it very much feels like we have to. We got to go
Yeah.
out there. Eventually, we're going to have to anyway because we're going to run out of supplies or something's going to happen. And it just seemed like Volume 1 gave them a reason to go outside
To go
and
beyond.
to go beyond. Um, and they obviously have to combat the king. I can't remember
Hmm.
his name now.
King James.
James. I knew it started with a J. I want to say Jeffrey, but I'm like, no, Jeff's my name.
He actually was my favorite character development
He was cool.
um, for book one, even for book one, and for anybody who watched a lot of movies when they were younger. that character should actually be somewhat familiar.
It feels familiar.
Oh my God, now the name of the movie is escaping me, but it was an Ice-T movie. Trespass. I think the name of the movie was Trespass. Um, there was this gangster, and he was a sharp dressed guy, and his men were not sharp dressed. And one of the guys, one of his men was played by Ice Cube, and Ice-T played the character of King James in the
Okay.
movie.
I see it.
And for whatever reason, that when I started to write it and I started to pen it in and wanted to give that you know gangster who fancies himself a businessman
Yep.
approach, King James just popped into my head and that movie was back in '92, and I don't think I've seen it since. But the character, for whatever reason, just stuck with me.
Yeah. I like I like that King James is kind of the main antagonist. He's the main
Yeah,
issue that they're going after. They obviously deal with a lot of issues along the way of what buildings are safe. Then you start to introduce, yes, there are different factions within this smaller community. So
yeah,
you can't cross so and so works for so and so. So then the lines start to become a little more defined, but also blurred because this group could work for this other group. I'm obviously speaking very generalized because I want people to go
yeah,
buy the book, not give away the store. But I like that everybody still seemed to kind of tie in with everybody. Like the 1 minute you could have a pistol pointed at your enemy's face, and the next minute he could still have his pointed at you, but you could be pointing at somebody else together. And it
yeah,
just seemed like there was very, very Civil War, very maybe a little further than Civil War, on like a confused lines of Civil War of there's sides, but there aren't.
yeah.
Everybody's still
And
kind of fending for themselves.
that was a question somebody asked me. Of course, that natural step of evolution. I've been taking my books to gun shows. I did them for 30 years for dad. I may as well do them for myself now.
Yep.
And that was what somebody asked me at one of the shows. He says, "So who's fighting who?" So what do you mean? It's Americans against Americans. He says, "No, no, no. Is it like Republicans versus Democrats? No, it's Americans against Americans. When push comes to shove, I know I'm fighting for my family.
Yeah. Nobody else.
Period.
Yeah.
I'm not. No, I'm not fighting for somebody's political agenda, somebody's um, identity politics, any of that crap. I'm fighting for my family
Right.
because they're who matters. And
Absolutely.
it just so happens I get a couple friends fighting with me. It helps out.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely helps when you're not going solo. So what did you learn from volume 1 to volume 2 as a writer?
Details, details, and more details without getting too carried away. So it had been legitimately almost 3 decades since I had read a book. And going back to the Joe Rogan podcast with Jack Carr right before Savage Son, or right after Savage Son came out, and I had heard about Jack Carr, and I was really good at buying books back then, and just putting them on my bookshelf and saying, "No, I'll get to them someday."
Oh, me too.
And I listened to it, and I remember I had his books ordered before I listened to it, and I thought, man, that's a really expensive decoration. 3 books, give or take $30 a piece. That's an expensive decoration.
It is.
And they came in, and I read the Terminal List in a week. I had all 3 of them done by the end of the month, and I was craving more. And the details, and I remember how some of the details made me feel. And that was something I wanted to, for lack of a better word, replicate. I want you to feel more of what my characters are feeling. I want you to see what they're seeing better. That was the big thing I learned between the two was details.
You definitely feel like in the second one that you know the characters a little better.
Hmm.
You kind of side with them a little bit more. Obviously, just from a as a fellow author, the details, man, you really crushed it in the second one. The first one's great, though. Don't get me wrong. I love the first one. The second one, though, I feel like the quality of it
Yes.
was
Yes.
increased significantly. And I say that in the most complimentary way possible. And I don't want
Well,
people to go out there and be like, whoa, let's go pick up the second book because the first one's shit. Nope, no, it's not. The first one is
the
outstanding. You
funny
got to read it.
the funny story with the first one when I first started writing it, um, same friend who told me that first person may be a niche for the type of story. I was describing to him chapter one, and he says, "Oh no, dude, don't do that. Don't get too detailed. People won't want to read it." And I took that. I know I took that a little too far. Um, but I also know, and I had people tell me from the get go, as book one progressed, my writing progressed. And there was, and for those who've read it already, and those who will, there was no professional editor for book one. I didn't. I thought Microsoft Word was the end all be all for editing. And then it got introduced to Grammarly, and even that was not as good as having somebody sit down and read it.
Yeah.
Um, so, getting an editor, that was another big thing that I learned between the two. And she really, truly made a big difference.
Yeah. It shows. It really does. And I say that again, I say that complimentary. Um, there's a big difference in quality in the first
Hmm.
two, but I can say this though, I finally figured out how to be a reader and
Hmm.
not try to be a writer at the same time. So I've managed to divide the two finally so that I can actually enjoy a book without beating it up. Um,
Yeah.
I read the first book and I just enjoyed it. Yeah, errors, things in there, but you know
Hmm.
what? I enjoyed it enough to where that didn't stop me. And for
Yeah.
anybody listening, I would tell you this: um,
You
until
have to read
you've
the first
walked a
one.
mile in someone's shoes, don't attempt to criticize them.
Yeah.
So the fact that you know this book was written, yeah, it has errors in it. It's not perfect, but it's a great story. And if you open up the pages looking for a story, you're going to enjoy it. Now, if you want to highlight that there's a missing period here and there's a missing comma there and all that crap, you're not going to like it. But you're not going to like any book because there's there's errors in every
There's
single
errors
book.
in all of them. And
So,
it's so funny how many errors I notice now.
yeah.
As I'm reading, I'm
You're your
like, oh,
worst
you missed
critic.
that or you missed that.
Yeah.
It's funny though. I was at a show it was outside of Columbus. It was somewhere in Columbus, Ohio. And there was a older woman, I want to say probably in her 50s, and she bought my book. And she bought it on Saturday, fairly early in the day. And I walked by her and her husband's table on Sunday, and she says, "I just want to let you know there's a few errors in your book." She goes, "I am an English major."
Oh,
She goes, "But I absolutely love where your story's going."
God. Same.
It didn't deter her one bit, and that
Nope.
made me feel really good too.
It didn't deter me either, man. And again, I figured out how to separate myself. So when I read a book, I can read it and enjoy it. And
Yeah.
although I noticed the errors, it never once stopped me and said, "Man, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's doing." I just wanted to
Mhm.
just keep writing, and I was like, it was good. It was really good, and I think to the progression you made in volume 2, you can obviously see the quality. You can tell that there was an editor who sharpened it up, but I don't think it
Yeah.
took away. in a way, the first book kind of helped with the grittiness of it,
Yeah.
the true reality of the situation, you know.
Mhm.
But I think, you know, having it a little sharper for volume two um, is good, because what they needed to do was a little more technical. What this
Yeah.
part of the story is about execution. So in a way, I think that was good, because um, survivability kind of changed in this part of the bigger story. Um,
Yeah.
so let's talk about that. How did survivability change in volume two?
Well, it went more with volume one. It was certainly more fighting to survive. Um, and but it wasn't. It was waiting for the fight to come to your doorstep and then fighting to survive. With volume two, it's certainly you know, if we don't go fight now, it's going to be worse later.
Yeah, it's definitely, they start to wonder, like, what should we do next? I even think Will, the main character, you know, in the first book, he was very much like, I'm not the bona fide leader. I'm not the exacto
Mhm.
leader. I'm kind of the, uh, I'm just kind of taking the reins.
Everybody's got to say,
Everybody's got to say. But in volume two, I really feel like Will stepped up to the plate a little bit and was a little more assertive with that. Was that kind of the intent?
the character, and I've had so much fun with character development on that end of things, because you look at relationships in the beginning of book one, and they've changed by the end,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get into book two, and Will has personal reasons to grab it. I guess grab a hold of it and just take charge, and this is how it's going to be. Take it or leave it. Um, and it was necessary. I think it was necessary to expand in that direction with the character
Yeah, I think the
based
stakes
on
were a little higher.
circumstance.
Yeah, stakes were a
Yeah.
little higher. I think he needed to. I think he knew he needed to step up to the plate. I don't think it almost feels like he was trying not to, because he didn't want to seem like a dictator. He wanted everybody to have a
Yeah.
say, everything to be fair. But at the same time, I feel like his teammates the whole time still looked to him like the leader. Like, the only person not anointing him as the leader was himself.
Yeah.
But in volume
Yeah.
two, that changes. Will really takes the reins and kind of pushes into unknown territory. And they had a little bit more of a long-standing problem in this one, because they're going after King James. They're trying to, you know, work through the drug deals and the backdoor deals that he's got that kind of help protect him from them even getting
Hmm.
to them. There's a lot of camping out. I really liked the scene between Will and, I think it's Lee, the female,
Hmm.
where survivability is necessary, but it puts him in a very uncomfortable situation with another woman. And I thought,
Yeah.
this is a, and I thought, I don't know Richard, but this is probably about as romantic as this guy's getting in one of his books. There's always that kind of that you know, romantic thing in every book, no
Hmm.
matter what it is. And I thought, this is it. This was, he checked that box. Now he doesn't ever have to do it again. But
Yeah.
I love the awkwardness in it. And how'd you come up with that idea?
Again, I was just writing along, and I thought, okay, now you've got these two people who wound up in a house alone in a downpour. Western New York downpours are not comfortable. It gets cold when it's raining here,
Yeah.
and I just thought, okay, you've got these two people who have. There's been leading up to it. There was a little bit of uh, batting of the eyes, I guess, especially from the female character to Will.
Yes.
So why not make it uncomfortable? Let's make Will a little bit
Yeah.
uncomfortable here.
Yes.
Um,
Why not give him
and
more stress?
yes,
I love it. Yeah. When I read that, I was like, this is perfect. I actually went back and reread it again, and I was like, did I read what I just think I read? I was like,
yeah,
this is hilarious. This is absolutely hilarious. It's putting this
yes,
guy trying to be Mr. Tough and trying to lead everything, and then he's so vulnerable and awkward when it came to that. I was like, this is awesome. This is perfect. Um, I couldn't help but crack up when I was like, everything. And I'll give you this, man. I've read a lot of fiction books because I love fiction books.
mhm,
Um, every good book has a balance of everything in it, from being serious to being funny and humble to sad, romantic. And for a first person book, it can be hard to kind of do all those things without it kind of making it look like the character's eyes are constantly shaking. But I think you
mhm.
did a really, really good job of, we know Will. We know what he's been through. We kind of feel his stress a little bit. Every time he sits down to have a cigar, I'm like, God damn, me too. Like, like I'm right
Man, I
there
don't
with you.
blame him for having one at that moment.
Yeah, like, I kind of I get it. Like at first I was like, man, there's a lot of cigars in here, but then I was like, well, you know what? I'd probably be doing that too, but
Oh
just
yeah,
leave me alone and let me enjoy this smoke.
let me
Because
take an hour. Just yeah.
yeah, I mean, golly. So now, again, a lot of cigars in here. I love cigars myself. Was that Where'd that come from? Was that a Richard thing?
That's that's part of who I am. And there, yeah, the idea of having, I do actually, to my right now is a cabinet humidor that is very sadly sitting empty at the moment.
Oh,
Um, and since I had it, to be honest, I've only had it full once. But that is a definite character trait. Me, Billy, and Beans, we used to get together about once a month for cigar and bourbon night. So that's where the bourbons came into play too, especially the Lead Slingers bourbon, which is mentioned, I believe, in both books.
hmm.
Because that is just between the group of guys, it is our absolute favorite. Um, and cigars, I was having a cigar right when you started rolling the camera. I had a cigar again for breakfast. I mean, that's normal for me. So to give the main character some of my personal traits, why not throw that one in there?
Yeah. So let's talk bourbon and cigars for a minute. I mean, we might
Okay.
as well, since they're important things to discuss. So
Oh yeah.
you said Lead Slingers is one of your favorites. What else is in the liquor cabinet?
Right now I've got a bottle of Blade and Bow bourbon, which I bought my first bottle of that. My friend Dotson recommended it, and he recommended it because he heard from a guy how good it was. And I
Didn't
bought my
try it
first
himself.
bottle, and the store in his area didn't have it. And he lives in Ohio, so it's all state controlled, I believe.
Oh man, yeah.
And it had, yeah, yeah, it's like here. We walked into the liquor store in Dunkirk, and I mean thousands of bottles. And I was looking for something, and I found my first bottle of Blade and Bow. And oh my god, that was just so phenomenal. Um, the best one I've had to date. I don't have right now, but I have had was IW Harper 15 year. It was about $80, and dare I say it was life changing. I
Hmm.
mean, it was smooth, it was flavorful, um, just awesome, awesome bourbon.
I think the best bottle of bourbon I ever had was $25. And I can't for the life of me think of the name of it right now. But it was 25 bucks one week. I read it on a bourbon blog. It was like, this is one of the bourbons that people are just, you know,
Ranting and raving about.
undervaluing. They don't know the goodness of it. And I was like, okay. So I went to my liquor store and it was there on the shelf, which is crazy for Oklahoma because Oklahoma didn't change its liquor laws until just a couple years ago. So you had the standard Jack Daniels, Jim Beam. You had the standard bourbons and whiskeys sitting on the shelf. Nothing crazy, nothing top shelf, nothing even really bottom shelf. Like it was all the middle
Yep.
tier, name brand, high sellers. And this was probably about a year after they changed their liquor laws. And I thought, I'm gonna go to the liquor store. So I went to one liquor store by my house. It's sitting right there, right when I walked in.
No
Boom.
kidding.
I recognized the label. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's like $25 after tax. Took it home. It was excellent stuff. I finished a bottle. I think maybe a month later, I went back to go get another one. $50.
Gone.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
I look at the lady behind the counter. I was like, I'm in here all the time. What the heck? You couldn't have said something to me like, what are you doing? But it was
There's
because it caught on.
Yeah, and there's a Southern Tier brewery that's right up the road for me, about 30 minutes or so, and they started doing um, hard liquors, and they had a bottle of bourbon that Billy had brought over, and Dotson was in town, and Dotson's quite the bourbon connoisseur, and I thought it was hilarious because he took a sip of it, and it's made right here in New York. And he took a sip of it and he said, I would almost bet there's some good old boys from Kentucky working at that place because it was about as close to Kentucky bourbon outside of Kentucky bourbon that he's ever had.
Well, a lot of those guys at the distilleries, they were lifers. They worked there for a
Yeah.
really long time.
Oh,
And then as liquor
and
laws started
and
changing around the country, bourbon didn't become as exclusive to Tennessee and Kentucky
yep,
as it is. So then these guys started going, well, I can go over here and start doing craft bourbon. I can come up with some different
yep,
ideas. And they started branching out. The next thing you know, all these other brands have a little bit of history to them because of
yep.
the head distiller. And one of my favorite whiskeys is Whistle Pig. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I've never had it.
Well, it's too late now, man, because the regular 12 years like $130 a bottle
Ooh.
now. When I bought
Well,
it, it
and
was
that's
60.
with that Southern Tier I was telling you about. It's a lot like the one you found for 25 bucks. It was $35 a bottle. And I walked in there. I bought I think two or three bottles because it was just phenomenal. And I walked in there 6 months ago and it was 55 bucks. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? And they've got the whole line of Southern Tier sitting on the shelf, and they're all 35 bucks except the bourbon. So it caught on.
Yeah. And that seems like that's what happened with Whistle Pig. I saw I actually saw it on Instagram. John Dudley, the big time bow hunter, he was cooking and he had a picture of it. I was like, "What's Whistle Pig?" So I looked it up on the internet. Small whiskey distillery. They're mainly a
Mm-hmm.
rye, and couldn't get it in Oklahoma. I tried to get it down in Texas when I was stationed down there. Super hard to find down there too. Finally got my hands on a bottle of their 12 year, which at the time they called Old World, and it's amazing stuff. I was like, this is the best juice ever. Like this, it changed my
Mm-hmm.
life. Like, ooh, $60, $70 bottle. 2 years later, $80 a bottle. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
People are understanding. They're getting
Yep.
it too. Now it's well over 100, no matter anywhere you go. And then their basic bottle, which is like a 10 year, is like 80 to $90 for a basic bottle. And I'm like, yeah, you're killing me now.
And I'll tell you, that's one of the nice things about the lead slingers is, quite frankly, it's still like I think It's under $35.
Yeah, I think it's made
The
here in
first
Oklahoma.
bottle, the first bottle we ever got was $32, and then I found it in my local store for 26, and now they're up to 34, I think.
Yeah, you definitely
You
don't
know,
have to pay. Um,
a lot of money for good bourbons.
a good bourbon that isn't too high, that stayed kind of low. I think it's under $50. Is Four Roses single barrel.
I have had.
Yeah, you can still
Actually,
find it.
we were down doing the machine gun shoot in Kentucky, and they had a place called the Liquor Barn. And if you ever get the chance to go, just to go to the Liquor Barn is worth it. We walked in there, and it was warehouse shelving for liquor, and their bourbon aisle was it was both sides, and it was a 40-foot aisle of bourbon.
Mm.
And we picked up, some stuff. I did wind up with one bottle of, I believe it was a single barrel bullet bourbon,
Oh, Bullet's good too.
exclusively sold in Kentucky. And no, it was cask strength. That's what it was. It was a cask strength.
Yeah,
And oh God, yeah, I brought two bottles home. I still have one. Um,
it's a little hot.
it, oh, yeah, yeah. That was the very first and only bourbon to date that a Gatorade chaser was necessary, because it just burned the whole way down, and it stayed burning.
Yeah,
But it was good.
cast strength can.
Yes.
It's definitely
Um,
it can be pretty hot. I
so,
I don't normally put ice cubes if I don't have to because I don't want to water it down. But there's a couple.
yeah,
There's a couple that I
there's a,
do.
there's that would be one. Another trick I was taught recently, a little eyedropper with a couple drops of water,
Yep.
and it especially with something like that one that is so strong, it might make all the difference.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna lie, I've actually been semi terrified to open the other bottle.
Bullet's a good bourbon though. I like Bullet. It's good stuff too.
It's another favorite, and it is, again, it's under $50 a bottle. It's definitely it's affordable.
Yeah. Let's talk cigars, man. And I appreciate you turning me on to, was it Perdomo? Am I saying it right?
Perdomo cigars. Yep.
Yeah, I appreciate you turning me on to them because the Lot 23 was excellent. Um, I don't like a super harsh cigar, a
Yep.
super full body, to kind of like that mellow to lower range of them,
Mild to medium. Yep.
mild to medium. Like
That's where I'm at with cigars too.
it was in Lot 23 was just good smoke,
Perfect.
but it wasn't
Yes.
too harsh, but it had some character to it. And I was like, okay, I can't get cigars here, so I have to order them online, and they get here, and I have to let them sit for a little bit to kind of rehydrate. But yeah, it was excellent.
Perdomo cigars, I was introduced to them years after I had started smoking cigars. It was around my 21st birthday that I was introduced to good Honduran, Nicaraguan, Dominican cigars, something other than Cubans. Prior to that, my mind said there was Phillies and Cubans. That was it. And I walked into my first cigar shop right before my 21st birthday, and I was just blown away. Wall to wall cigars from, again, Honduras, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic. Um, and that's where I got my start, so to speak. And Perdomo was introduced to me with, the first Perdomo I ever had was the Cigar series. The band outright said the cigar. And they were just a phenomenal smoke. And I found out later that they were about $3. And after having smoked them, I'd had a Davidoff, I'd had $20 cigars, I'd had $30 cigars, and that the cigar just it stayed with me. It was just amazing. And I later saw in Cigar Aficionado magazine where that $2.89 cigar was rated higher than a $18 Davidoff.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, I can, I don't have the kind of palate where I can tell you that there was a hint of nutmeg or that it was grown on such and such a farm in a corner of Nicaragua.
Same.
But I know what I like.
Yeah.
And I've had one of the more expensive cigars I ever had was a God of Fire. And I think I spent $24 on it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Really?
But that, for me, that particular Davidoff that I got, it was actually given to me at the machine gun shoot in Kentucky. And for me, it just was not as nearly as good, in my opinion, as the Perdomo at the time. And of course, that company Perdomo took off, and their cigars have gotten a little. They're obviously not $3 anymore. Um,
Yeah, no,
but
they've gone up a little bit. Still budget friendly
but
though. It's not too bad.
yes, and they are still my go-to cigar. I walked into the humidor on the Indian reservation actually the other day, and they have the 4-pack of Perdomos in the little water pouch. And first thing I grabbed was 2 of those, and then I walked around and grabbed some individual cigars. Oh, I want to try this, or it's been a while since I had one of those. And
We had this
but Perdomo
awesome
is go-to.
we had this awesome cigar shop when I lived in Colorado Springs back in 21, and they had a walk-in humidor. So it was this massive room, it was a walk-in,
Yeah.
and since it was during COVID, they didn't allow you to touch anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to wear your mask in there and all that crap. But the positive thing about it was that because you couldn't touch anything, one of the workers had to go in there with you and they bagged it up. But you got to ask questions and you got to know them, and
Mm-hmm.
they I didn't realize how much they knew about cigars. So then I'm telling them like, "Hey, sometimes I like it a little sweeter. I don't like it as harsh. I like low smoke. I don't like unnatural flavoring." I could start just kind of rattling it off, and they'd be like, "All right, let's go over here." Yeah, it was the best decision I ever made, because then those guys took me to the corners of the room and said, "Oh, you'd
Where
like
you're
that
going to
one
be
back
the
there."
happiest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. They told me exactly what I wanted and kind of expanded my palate a little bit when it came to that. Because I'm like
Mm-hmm.
you, I like to read the description that some people put on the reviews. I'm like, oh yeah, a hint of nutmeg and cinnamon with a twist of maple syrup and apple cider on the back end, and I'm like, I didn't smell
I
or
didn't
taste
taste any
none
of
of
that.
that. Like, what are you talking about? I liked it, but I didn't taste any of that. Like, I don't understand how you're doing that.
So
But these guys weren't like, they weren't those guys. They weren't the ones
yeah,
to say all that crap. They were like,
yeah,
this is smoky, sweet. It'll be what you're looking for. Hints of cherry or something like that. They would just kind of say
yeah.
little things, but it wasn't all that fluff of it like toasted leather. And I'm like, how do you even
You
know
know,
what toasted
and
leather tastes like?
there's one cigar on the planet to date that, it's the Drew Estate Kentucky Fire.
I want to try
And
that.
oh my God. And when I described that cigar in book one, the aroma of campfire and leather, because I will tell you that is what you get from that cigar. That is the only cigar I could ever. I mean, you take it out of the cellophane, you roll it under your tongue or under your nose, and it's campfire and leather. And you roast the end, and you take that first draw, and it's campfire and leather.
Spot on.
It is spot on, and I think it's just absolutely a phenomenal cigar.
I had one in
And
my
I
cart the
know
other day, and I was gonna buy it, and then I removed it, and I should have.
it's don't put one in your cart. Put at least two.
Okay.
I am that guy when it comes to cigars. I sent you a picture of Drew Estate that I was smoking the other night,
Yeah.
and I bought two because if I really like it, I'm gonna want another one. Period. Um, but I also know, being of the mild to medium bodied cigars. So the first cigar is always in the evening. In this case, with new cigar, I'm going to smoke it in the evening because if it's not mild enough for me to have as a breakfast cigar with my coffee, I don't want to find that out at 5 o'clock in the morning. You
That's
know,
how you start your day.
um, yes,
With a
cigar,
crappy
cigar and
cigar.
coffee. Yep.
You know,
And
having a cigar in the morning was kind of a game changer. I've never really done it before until like a couple weeks ago. And I was like, you know what? I'm up. I'm gonna go have one while I sip my coffee. And it was perfect.
yeah, you're just waking up, so you're already in uh, that relaxed, trying to wake up state of mind. And it's funny how that cigar just helps your mind to get going on the day.
Yeah.
And that end of the day cigar is that one that just makes you melt right into your chair. It,
So
it's it
let's talk what's next for writing before I let you go.
okay.
What's the future of obviously I've read volume 2, so I know there's going to be a third. There has to be. Um, be kind of a shame if you didn't do it, but where what's next? Volume 2 comes out here November 7th.
hmm
Are you going to try to do one a year? What's the future of the series?
The goal is 1 year. And right now, and I sent Eric Bishop, who has been just an awesome inspiration for me, and very helpful. I sent him the prologue for something else that I'm working on, which is told third person. Um, it's definitely different from what you've read from me so far.
Okay.
So with Our War, yes, it's I'm going to try for one a year, and then it's going to be editing and hopefully able to get it out a little quicker. The second book was written in a year flat. And I even took 3 months off. Something Matt Scott said to me: "Don't write when you're having a bad day."
Hmm.
Well, I happen to have 3 months of bad days, so
That's a lot.
it happens. And I stayed away from the book, and I was able to I finished it pretty quick. Um, but then it was the editing, and I'm self-published, so it was also having the money to do it.
Yeah, good
And
editors are
that's
expensive.
yes. Both each book cost about 3 grand
Yeah.
just to get them published.
Yeah.
So
It's
it
not cheap.
was having that money when it was ready and when the book was done. Um, so editing and the editing process, and I'm sure you've experienced. You just, man, I wrote it. I don't want to fix it now. I just there was those
I'm
moments
done.
where I'm looking at it. I'm like, I know I need to edit, but I really don't want to.
Yeah. I wrote my nonfiction, and I've been working on several fiction books, and I finished one of the fiction books, and then I edited it, and then I went and I printed it off, and I said I'm going to go through with a red pen. And my wife was like, "I don't think we have any red pens. You want me to pick you up one or two?" I was like, "Nope. Pick up a whole pack of them. Give me like a 12 pack, just like you would beer.
Yeah.
Give me a 12 pack of them because
Yep. Gonna need them.
we're gonna roll through 'em, man." And I did, but you
Well,
know
and
what? That's okay. It gave me
yeah,
ideas, and I'm actually gonna revise that book into a different book because I
Mm-hmm.
think I figured out I got a better idea for the plot line. Same with the same concepts, same things.
Mm-hmm.
But it was worth my time.
Yeah. I My editor for this one was a friend of mine from high school who always dreamt about being an editor, which I had no idea until after I told her I'd written a book. So, um, so I get back her editing notes and then I make those corrections. And then I was proofreading again and making those corrections. And it was tireless and it was not something I wanted to do, but I knew I needed to do it.
Right.
Um, so hopefully with book three, understanding it better and in the process of editing better, it won't be so, "Oh, I don't want to do this,
Right.
and just get it done. Because there was with book two, there was about a month and a half where I'm like, dude, I really don't want to do this, and I do like a page and then stop. Um, where after that month and a half, it was, okay, I've got chapters. I don't have pages. I have chapters to get done.
Right.
And really sat down and hammered it out. And the proofreading went pretty quick too. So I'm hoping for one a year. It might take a little bit longer, but that's my goal.
So Our War Volume 2, November 7th, 2022. You can pre-order it now on Amazon. Be looking for a Volume 3 next year. Other projects coming from Richard. Where can people who are listening find more about you, man?
Richard Maverick Books on Facebook and R Maverick Books on Instagram or Twitter.
There
I
you
do
go.
have a e-commerce site, but I don't know the link to it off the top of my head.
Let's stick with Instagram and Twitter.
All right.
Man, it was a pleasure. I look forward to reading more from you in the future. Our War Volume 2 was excellent. I saw the maturation in it. I saw the advance in the story. Saw you grow as a writer right there on the pages, man. So I tip my hat to you for putting it out there because it's a big endeavor to just come up with a book, let alone self-publish it and put it out there and say, here I am. It's a very vulnerable thing. So I tip my hat to you, man. It's an excellent book. I
Thank you.
love both of
Thank
them,
you.
and it was great talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you like this two-part episode, make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple so you can be notified of all the newest episodes and the newest guests.